English while walking through the city. The city that speaks before you do. You step out into the city, and before you even say a word, it speaks to you. Not with grammar or textbooks, but through rhythm, texture, and sound. The hum of engines, the shuffle of shoes, the faint music leaking from a passing car. It's English in its purest form, unfiltered, alive, unpredictable. Every corner, every echo carries a message. You just need to learn how to listen. The air feels different when you walk through a city that speaks another language. There's a quiet tension inside you, the need to understand, to connect, to respond. You hear two people laughing outside a cafe. Their words blend with the clinking of cups, the low buzz of traffic, and suddenly you realize this isn't just background noise. It's communication happening in real time, flowing naturally, without pause or fear. The kind of English you want to speak lives right here, in these unplanned moments. You look up at a sign, one way. The phrase stays with you longer than you expect. One way. Simple words, yet they carry something bigger. Direction, purpose, movement. This is what English truly is. Not a list of vocabulary to memorize, but a journey that shapes how you move through the world. As you walk, your brain starts mapping everything. Sounds, meanings, emotions. The city becomes a living classroom, and you're both the student and the explorer. The first thing you notice is rhythm. English doesn't live in rules, it lives in beats. A bus whooshes by. The hiss of the doors matches the rise and fall of conversation nearby. Someone says, "I'll see you later," and the melody of that phrase feels almost musical. Once you start noticing this, you can't unhear it. Every interaction, every sound, becomes part of a bigger pattern. You begin to understand that learning English isn't about knowing everything. It's about noticing everything. As you walk further, something changes. The fear of not understanding starts to fade. You realize that language isn't something you need to control. It's something you join. The city doesn't stop for you. It invites you in. You don't translate every word. You feel the meaning between them. The sounds stop being noise and start becoming signals. The phrases you once struggled with now fit into context naturally. The moment you stop chasing English, it starts walking beside you. This is where the real journey begins, not in a classroom, but in motion. You learn by living. You understand by being present. And as you walk through this city that never sleeps, you're reminded that every language is a rhythm, every rhythm a story, and every story a path that leads you closer to fluency. The city is talking. The question is, are you ready to listen? The rhythm of the streets. The first thing you notice as you walk is that the city moves like a language. Cars pass with a steady pulse, footsteps overlap in syncopation, and even the way people breathe seems to follow a rhythm. It's the same with English. Every phrase has a beat, a rise, a fall. It's not about words, but timing. You start to realize that fluency isn't learned through grammar charts. It's absorbed through rhythm, the invisible pattern that guides how ideas flow from one person to another. As you cross the street, you hear two people talking. The words aren't separate. They're connected, sliding into each other like waves on a shore. "How are you doing?" becomes a single sound. Almost one word. "What are you doing?" Your brain hesitates, then catches the pattern. It's not about understanding every syllable. It's about catching the tempo. Once you feel it, English begins to make sense beyond vocabulary lists. It becomes a living pulse, something you can walk with. There's a moment when you stop trying to analyze English and start to feel it. Like music, it takes rhythm to feel natural. You listen not only to what people say, but to how they say it. The small pauses, the stress on certain words, the rise at the end of a question. A vendor calls out, "Morning, love." The melody is cheerful, quick, light. Two strangers greet each other with a nod. their exchange short but meaningful. You begin to notice patterns that no textbook could ever teach. The streets become your teacher now. The passing trains and murmuring crowds create a constant background of English rhythm. It's unpredictable yet structured, like conversation itself. Every interaction around you follows a rhythm of connection. Question, response, laughter, silence. Once you start hearing these patterns, your mind begins to anticipate them. You can almost predict when someone will pause, when a phrase will rise or fall. That's the sound of understanding forming. You realize that English is not meant to be spoken from the throat, but from movement. It lives in gestures, steps, expressions. Just as you can't dance without feeling the beat, you can't speak naturally without sensing the rhythm. It's why natives seem so effortless. They're not thinking of grammar, they're following the flow. When you walk through the city, surrounded by its tempo, your mind starts to align with it. The street becomes your metronome. A bus stops, a door slams, someone laughs in the distance. You're no longer translating. You're interpreting the sound of life in another language. You notice how emotions change the rhythm. Excitement speeds it up, calm slows it down. The same sentence can sound different depending on intention. You begin to listen with more than your ears, with your intuition. And that's when English starts to feel like something you've always known, just waiting to be remembered. In that moment, as you turn the corner and the city opens up ahead, you realize something powerful. Fluency isn't about speed or perfection. It's about rhythm. It's about matching the pace of thought, sound, and feeling. The city moves, and so do you. The more you listen, the more fluent you become. Not because you study harder, but because you're in sync with the living rhythm of the streets. The sounds fade for a second, replaced by your own footsteps echoing down the sidewalk. You start whispering small phrases to yourself, testing their flow. How's it going? Can I get a coffee, please? Each line becomes a beat, a breath, a heartbeat in the language you're starting to own. You're not just learning English, you're walking inside it. And somewhere between the traffic lights and the quiet alleys, you begin to understand that fluency isn't a destination. It's a rhythm you join, one step, one word, one heartbeat at a time. Conversations hidden in the noise. The city speaks in fragments. You hear them everywhere. Pieces of sentences floating through the air, unfinished thoughts carried by strangers passing by. A man on his phone laughs, saying, "You won't believe what happened." A woman answers a question in the distance. "I told you it's not that simple." These pieces mean nothing by themselves, yet together they form a portrait of how real English sounds. Broken, spontaneous, alive. You start to realize that understanding English isn't about catching every word. It's about catching the meaning between them. When you first tried to listen in English, you focused too much on words. Each sound felt like a puzzle piece you had to place perfectly. But now, walking through the city, you hear differently. You start to feel the context, tone, energy, rhythm. You no longer need subtitles to understand that "hey" can mean surprise, or that "sure" can mean agreement, hesitation, or even sarcasm. These layers of sound are invisible in textbooks, yet they build the heart of real communication. At a crosswalk, you stop next to a group of tourists. Their conversation blends into the sound of a bus engine and footsteps crossing the street. Someone says, "Wait, is this the right way?" The way they stretch "right," that little hesitation, tells you everything. Language lives in these small details, in the breath before an answer, in the tension of uncertainty. The city is full of these living dialogues, and every one of them trains your ear to feel emotion through tone, not translation. A cafe door opens, and suddenly the noise shifts. Inside, a soft melody plays under the low hum of conversation. You catch fragments. "Double espresso." "I'm running late." "Same old thing." None of it is complete, but together they tell a story. You can feel who's tired, who's relaxed, who's distracted. The meaning isn't just in the words, it's in how they move, how they breathe. That's what it means to listen like a native, not decoding, but sensing. Every city has its music, and every language has its melody. English, you realize, isn't just something to be learned. It's something to be heard fully. The laughter between phrases, the sighs before answers, the rhythm of people saying goodbye. You start to see that the most powerful English lessons happen not in classrooms but in motion, in the middle of ordinary life where communication is raw and human. You pass a street musician playing guitar. His voice blends with the chatter of people walking by. The lyrics aren't clear, but the feeling reaches you. That's when you understand. Fluency isn't measured by how much you know, but by how much you feel. When you stop trying to control every word, you start to listen with empathy. And empathy is what gives meaning to language. Soon, you begin to notice how your own listening changes. You no longer panic when you miss a word. You trust that your brain will catch the message anyway. This shift, from fear to curiosity, transforms the way you learn. You don't just hear conversations, you join them, even silently. Every sound becomes part of a pattern that your mind starts to predict naturally. You're not just learning English, you're tuning into the human frequency beneath it. The city's noise fades into a calm hum, and you realize how much more you can understand when you stop trying so hard. You listen not to translate, but to connect. And within that noise, full of chaos and movement, you discover something rare: clarity, words that move with you. As you keep walking, something inside you begins to shift. The English words you once studied now start to appear naturally in your thoughts, almost without effort. They no longer sit in your memory like isolated pieces of information. They move with you, breathing and changing with every step. You notice that when you think, your inner voice begins to switch between languages, choosing whichever word fits the rhythm of the moment best. You're not forcing English anymore, it's walking beside you. You pass a bakery and read the sign, "Fresh bread every morning." The phrase feels simple, but it lands differently now. You hear its rhythm, you sense its warmth. The word fresh carries not just meaning, but a feeling. Clean, soft, new. You realize that every word in English holds a small piece of emotion, a subtle pulse that connects thought and sensation. This is the point where language stops being academic and becomes personal. You're not memorizing, you're absorbing. Your footsteps sync with the sounds around you. A car horn, a laugh, a siren far away. The city's rhythm becomes part of how you process English. Every sound is a reminder that language isn't static. It's alive, constantly moving. You begin to notice how certain phrases rise and fall like breathing. "You okay?" "I'm fine." "Let's go." The more you walk, the more these patterns start to feel like natural reactions, not rehearsed lines. There's a strange calm in realizing you don't need to remember everything. Fluency doesn't come from holding language tight. It comes from letting it flow through you. You hear a street vendor calling, "2 for 5, and your mind understands instantly without translating. The bridge between languages starts to disappear. You're thinking in English without even noticing the transition. It's not a moment of achievement. It's a quiet transformation, one that happens somewhere between a sound and a feeling. When you stop at a red light, you catch your reflection in a shop window. You look the same, yet something is different. You're more present, more aware. You realize that learning a language is not about becoming someone else. It's about discovering another version of yourself that was waiting to speak. The English-speaking version of you is not separate from who you are. It's the same mind, just moving in a different rhythm. As you continue walking, phrases begin to appear in your mind like thoughts, not translations. "I should grab some water." "That looks nice." I wonder where this street leads. The language feels fluid, spontaneous, alive. You understand that this is what native speakers mean when they say, thinking in English. It's not a mental exercise, it's a rhythm you live in. The city helps you find that rhythm because it never stops moving. It forces your attention outward, into the world, into real situations where words aren't just symbols. They're survival, connection, identity. Every step you take feels lighter because the pressure to get it right fades away. You start trusting that language is not something you own, but something you participate in. The city gives you permission to make mistakes, to listen again, to keep going. Even silence becomes part of the conversation. You realize that fluency isn't about mastering English. It's about aligning yourself with its movement. And as the streets narrow and the sounds grow softer, a sense of freedom rises. You're no longer afraid of forgetting words or making errors. You're finally speaking with rhythm, not resistance. The words move with you now, naturally, confidently, effortlessly, as if they were always meant to. The unexpected lesson at the corner. You reach a corner where the city seems to pause. The noise softens, the air feels heavier, and for a moment it's just you and the sound of your own footsteps. Then, a voice cuts through the stillness. A stranger asking for directions. You hesitate. It's not a question from a video or a listening exercise. It's real, immediate, unpredictable. Your brain freezes for half a second, trying to translate. But before you can, your instinct takes over. You answer, maybe not perfectly, but naturally enough to be understood. The stranger smiles, says, "Thanks," and walks away. And in that small exchange, you realize something you'd been missing all along. Fluency doesn't happen in quiet classrooms. It happens in corners like this, where you're caught off guard and have no choice but to respond. It's not about perfect grammar or flawless pronunciation. It's about courage in motion. You understood what they said, they understood what you meant, and that was enough. That's communication in its purest form. Connection before perfection. You keep walking, but the moment lingers. You replay it in your mind, not to judge it, but to feel its rhythm. The words came out faster than you expected. You didn't build them, they built themselves. That's the truth about language. It doesn't wait for permission. It shows up when you need it, if you've been listening long enough. The city has been training you for this, teaching you through rhythm, context, and chaos. All those hours of walking, hearing fragments, sensing patterns. They've prepared you for this single, unscripted moment. You pass a street artist painting on a wall. His hands move without hesitation, as if he trusts the next stroke will find its place. That's what speaking feels like now. You trust your words to land where they belong. You're no longer thinking of language as something to control, but something to express. Fluency, you realize, isn't the absence of mistakes. It's the presence of confidence. A sudden rain begins, and people rush to find shelter. You join them under a small awning beside a cafe. The group of strangers standing near you starts talking about the weather. Casual, unimportant, but alive. You listen quietly, catching every familiar word. Without thinking, you add a small comment, and they laugh. You're part of the flow now, part of something that used to intimidate you. That simple moment, the sound of laughter after your words, feels more valuable than any grammar rule you ever studied. Rain hits the pavement with a steady rhythm. You watch the drops collect in puddles, reflecting lights from the city. You think about how many times you avoided speaking out of fear of being wrong, how many chances you missed to connect. And now, after one brief conversation with a stranger, everything feels different. You realize fluency doesn't arrive with a certificate or a finish line. It sneaks up on you in small victories. A sentence understood, a response given, a shared smile in the rain. When the rain slows, you step out again. The city looks the same, yet somehow it feels closer. You understand now that learning a language is not about reaching a perfect version of yourself. It's about letting go of the one that's afraid. The lesson you found at this corner wasn't about English. It was about trust. Trusting yourself to speak, to be understood, to belong. As you walk away, you look back at that quiet corner, the one where you hesitated, spoke, and grew. And for the first time, you realize that every street in this city holds a lesson waiting for you, hidden behind each moment you dare to speak. The sound of understanding. The city hasn't changed, but you have. The streets that once felt overwhelming now feel like an open conversation, a dialogue that never ends. You walk slower, not to delay, but to listen. Every sound means something now. The hum of an engine, the rhythm of shoes on the pavement, a quiet thank you at the coffee stand. They all carry meaning that doesn't need translation. You're not just hearing English anymore. You're understanding it in its purest form, as rhythm, emotion, and connection. You pause at a crosswalk and look around. The same scenes you've passed dozens of times now feel different. You hear the confidence in the shopkeepers, "Here you go," the warmth in a stranger's, "Take care." These simple phrases used to be invisible, but now they feel alive, full of personality. You realize that fluency isn't about big words or complex grammar. It's about presence. It's about being awake to the details of how people express meaning, even through tone and silence. The city's rhythm mirrors your own. You've stopped chasing words and started walking with them. You understand that English was never something outside of you. It was always waiting for the right rhythm to emerge. The rhythm of your thoughts, your breathing, your steps. It's strange how familiar it all feels now, as if the language has always been part of your inner soundscape, just waiting to surface. You stop by a park bench and sit for a moment. Around you, conversations flow naturally, some fast, some calm, some full of laughter. You understand pieces, sometimes entire phrases, but what surprises you most is how comfortable the uncertainty feels. You no longer panic when you don't catch everything. You trust context, tone, rhythm. You've reached the stage where your ear fills in what words don't say. That's when you know you've crossed from learning to belonging. The city, once a test, has become your teacher. Every sound, every encounter, every word half heard and half understood built the foundation of your fluency. You learned that language isn't memorized. It's lived. You listened until the rhythm of English merged with the rhythm of your own life. And now, even when you're silent, you carry that sound within you. A breeze passes through, carrying fragments of conversation from across the street. A man says, "See you tomorrow." A woman laughs softly. A bus engine roars. And for a moment, all of it blends together into one clear realization. Understanding is not about knowing everything. It's about being open enough to feel the message, even when the words are incomplete. As you stand up to leave, you hear your own voice. Calm, natural, unplanned. You ask someone for directions, thank them, say goodbye. The words flow effortlessly, not because you memorized them, but because they belong to you now. The city that once overwhelmed you has become your classroom, your soundtrack, your proof that fluency isn't taught. It's earned through presence, patience, and the courage to keep listening. You cross the final street, the light turns green, and the noise of the city wraps around you once more. But this time it doesn't sound like chaos. It sounds like harmony, a language that no longer feels foreign, but familiar. The city keeps moving, and so do you. You've stopped learning English. You've started living it.